Welcome, everyone, to the captive audience. It is September 11th, 2024. And I'm here with Don Anderson. We don't get to do this very often, so it's kind of cool. I am somebody who remembers when cats were safe in Springfield. I grew up in Springfield, Ohio.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, and I know the town well, and I know that if you take a town with, it used to have, I thought, closer to 80 some thousand, but it says it's 60,000 now. I'm not surprised. Um, and But if you stick 20,000 Haitians in there, it's not going to go well. But that was part of the news last night, and we'll talk about that tonight. But I can remember when cats were safe.
It is absolutely, in one way it's unbelievable. On the other hand, it's completely predictable. And I remember writing and talking about this 4 years ago, that the objective was to destroy the United States, and the best way to do it was to destroy the culture itself. So if you attack the culture itself by bringing in people who don't share the same value system, it can't survive. I mean, and they know this. What better way to destroy a place than to bring in a population, a third of the population? I mean, common sense would tell you, if you were really being ethical about this, you'd bring them in an assimilatable, I guess that's the word, assimilatable way. There's no way any country, city could absorb 30% of a different population group that doesn't share the same value system. It's insane.
Well, and so, and this is the 23rd anniversary today of when someone else wanted to see if they could destroy the United States, or certainly kill a lot of Americans. And they represent a cultural perspective that is incompatible with Western and American principles of right and wrong and jurisprudence and the Constitution. And it was interesting hearing some of the stories today. That I always hear a few stories on 9/11 that I haven't heard before. And one of them was that they knew they had the permission to shoot down any airliner that was coming towards the Capitol, which would have included Flight 93, after the first plane hit the Pentagon. And by the way, they sent President Bush to that South Dakota Air Force Base. I forget which one it was.
Must have been Minot.
To make sure that he had a connection to the national nuclear security systems, because the Pentagon being hit by the plane, they thought that if they lost the building, they didn't know at that point what was happening, that all the communications tied into the Pentagon would go down. And so they needed to get him out of DC. And of course, they didn't know also how widespread the attack was. And they are still not sure if it was the White House or the Capitol building, but obviously the Capitol building was a lot easier target to hit. But they had permission on 9/11 to shoot down any craft unauthorized over Washington, D.C. airspace, that including Flight 93. But they didn't have the ability to shoot it down, because the two F-16s that they scrambled were unarmed. And of course, I've heard this story before. Those two pilots had decided, they were given the option what to do, and they decided that they would ram in the aircraft to make sure that it could not reach its destination and kill people on the ground. And because they had they didn't have missiles. They didn't even have these planes have little Gatling guns in them,
So they were unarmed?
They had nothing. All they could do is ram any plane that would come in. And just remember also, they did not know that it was only 4 planes, that it couldn't be more at that point. Right. They were still trying to ground everything. Now, then another story I heard which is very interesting, was that the Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld at that time contacted the Russians who were conducting nuclear exercises in Russia and said, "We're about to up our nuclear posture here because we don't know what's going on, but we're upping our DEFCON status, and so we want you to know that." And they told them that, and the Russians immediately ended their nuclear exercise and took down all of the systems they had going for their nuclear exercise because they didn't want to take the chances that there would be a misunderstanding. And the Russians made it clear, it's like, it's not us.
Yeah.
It's someone else. It's not us. And of course, that was a different time. I don't even know if that kind of communication would be easy to pull off right now. But bottom line is a lot of things happened, a lot of details still yet to be sorted out. I got something from my cousin in Arizona who said, on this night 23 years ago, 246 people went to sleep in preparation for their morning flights. 2,606 people went to sleep in preparation for work in the morning the next day. 343 firefighters went to sleep in preparation for their morning shift. And 60 police officers went to sleep in preparation for morning patrol. 8 paramedics went to sleep in preparation for morning shift of saving lives. None of them saw past 10 a.m. September 11th, 2001. In a single moment, life may never be the same. As you live and enjoy the breaths you take today and tonight, before you go to sleep in preparation for your life tomorrow, kiss the ones you love, snuggle a little tighter, and never take 1 second of your life for granted. That was written by somebody named Dr. Scott Young. I don't know who he is, but I thought it was poignant and worth sharing. And just when you think there should be clarity that maybe we've learned something, I see this story about 2 suspected terrorists, and a former top FBI official says he's concerned that the FBI stopped one alleged terrorism suspect who was targeting a Jewish center, but knowingly let another one into the U.S., eventually charged with planning to kill Trump. And this is when they did have intelligence that said that Iran was involved with a plot to try and kill President Trump. And of course, we know that actually happened just prior to an actual shot being taken at President Trump, which pierced his ear, but didn't harm him otherwise, but did kill one person and severely injure 2 others in Pennsylvania. And so this is a perplexing thing because we seem to still be sorting out what are we getting as far as security for our country, for our leaders, for and then we've got that southern border, which the FBI director and members of Congress have all emphasized has put us back to where we were, danger level, and perhaps greater than we were at the time of 9/11, which, they've caught several hundred people on the terrorist watch list who they let into the country anyway at the time, and then went and said, oops, we better go find them. They still have some that they haven't found, I think 50. And these are the ones that actually just sort of turn themselves in to ICE at the southern border or use the app and were identified. And then there's some 2 million people that have come into the country, they estimate, called gotaways, that the Border Patrol has no capacity to chase down because they're too busy dealing with people that are just showing up and declaring that they are seeking asylum and protection in the United States because they say they're afraid of going home. And those 10 million plus that have done that have made it impossible for them to really stop the 2 million who don't want to be caught. And amongst those 2 million would have to be thousands of people that would mean harm to the United States, in addition to
And see, the
fentanyl
only
dealers and gang members and so on.
the only rational explanation to that, because we know how simple it would be to stop this. It's very simple to stop. You build a wall, and people lie and say walls don't work. Well, walls seem to work pretty well for prisons. Walls seem to work pretty well to keep to separate East Germany from West Germany. Walls work pretty well around Berlin. They sure as heck seem to work pretty well between North and South Korea. They work really well, and that's all we have to do. It doesn't have to be a wall all the way across. We have a southern border that is like wide open, and it was made wide open on purpose. The day after Biden was elected. Since this is so simple, many people will say, "Oh, they're stupid, they're dumb." A lot of conservatives will say that. I don't think the people that are doing this are stupid or dumb. I think you got to look at what their goal is. If their goal was to reduce illegal immigration, then yes, it would be stupid or dumb. But if your goal is to create chaos and destroy the country, then it's brilliant. and that's precisely what they've done. There's no reason for this. The answer
is so obviously stupid.
Oh, it's a stroke. It's a stroke of the pen. At the stroke of a pen. Same thing with the Pennsylvania pipeline. We want to lower energy prices. In the minute they got in the office, couldn't have been the next day they stopped that. Anwar, we got more gas reserves than any place in the world up in Alaska. What do? They stop that. We know what the result of those things will be. They will be a destroyed economy, high energy prices, lack of jobs. Clearly, this administration's infiltrated with traitors. I don't know how else to put it.
Well, it is treason to intentionally do what they're doing and know that these are the consequences. Some of them pretend that they don't know that these are the consequences. Some of them just act as if that's not what they're intending to do, but and they sure wish they could stop the bad people, but they're not going to do anything to actually do that. And that's why when you see these two cases of people that have been let in, it kind of calls the question here. And there are people that within the FBI, whistleblowers that are coming out and telling people in Congress, look, this is not just an accident. And this needs to be explained. If we have treason going on in our government, and that's what it is to knowingly let somebody into the country that has said that they, could be involved with terrorism, connected with a plot to try and kill a former president who's the leading candidate for president on the Republican side. It's just, and I know we can fix some of this with our vote, but that's not going to be enough. But you know what? Joe Biden is going to go down in history as, I think, definitely one of the worst presidents ever. And the consequences of his presidency are going to live on no matter who wins in November. Here's just two examples of this. So today, at the 9/11 commemoration ceremony, Biden and Harris, and I guess Waltz and Schumer were there. Right. I don't know if Waltz was there, but Schumer was there.
Yeah.
And so was Trump. And they shook hands, Harris and Trump. Mm-hmm. But apparently the crowd started chanting.
Yeah, I just watched that. They're chanting, "Go Donald," and raving for Trump. And see, this thing, if I could just speak for a minute, this really caused me to have a lot of interesting thoughts, I think. If you watch the debates and watch the talking heads afterwards, and I'm talking about the conservative side, all they had were complaints about Trump should have did this and Trump should have did that. And he came across as too mean, too harsh. The usual stuff that—
Are you talking about the debate or the ceremony today?
I'm talking about the debate.
Okay. Yeah, because we're going to talk about that in a second.
Right. So. Yeah. So I just had, so all of the commentary was along those lines. And it almost as if he lost or it was a tie, that sort of thing. But the reality is, and I think you have to always keep this in mind, the talking heads are talking amongst the chattering class, I'll call them. They're talking amongst themselves. They all have college degrees and they all look the same way. And that goes for whether it's CNN or even Fox, or I call it Foxy News, if you will, since they all look like boxes.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. They're not the target audience. They're not the people Trump are talking to. And the people that Trump are talking to are people that come home with dirt under their fingernails after work, with a sore back after work, with their feet that are tired, people who actually work. Only about 20% of the population has a college degree. And these people forget that. It's like they talk amongst themselves. Trump has fantastic instincts. And he speaks the language that they understand. And they like the fact that he's in attack mode. And if you go look at some of those, once you did this analysis, I don't know if you saw that thing with Charlie Kirk, the Faulkner Focus, where they went and looked at the debate performance and tracked the Republicans, independents, and Democrats as they were speaking. Did you see that?
No.
Oh my goodness, you see, it was phenomenal because the Republicans and the independents, and in the grand scheme of things, the only thing that matters in this is the independents, because we know what the Republicans are going to do. We know what the Democrats are going to do. Who wins here depends on the independents. The independents tracked almost exactly with the Republicans.
Let's talk about that in a minute, because I got some articles about polling that we should also talk about post-debate and what happened in the debate. But just relative to 9/11, so that's one thing that happened. But Joe Biden apparently made a flippant remark about doing 9/11 when discussing this time. And don't forget, he skipped the 9/11 commemoration last year. He just blew it off. And so
we had to get a nap in.
I guess, or for whatever reason, he didn't do it. But this year he's doing 9/11 as if it's like doing a holiday or doing a trip to Disneyland or something. And the wife of a fire department assistant who died in the South Tower of the World Trade Center when it collapsed, her name is Joanne Barbara. She lashed out at Biden about this and said, the elected officials here today show their respect and reverence to the families of September 11th. In our president's words, do 9/11. Quite a flippant remark, but please remember that September 11th families live it every day, not just on the anniversary. And she said, in conclusion, may God bless those battling post-September 11th illnesses, our first responders and military here and abroad. May God bless America and never forget. So she was lashing out at Biden for being flippant about this. But you know what? He might be losing it altogether, because apparently somebody handed him a MAGA hat in Pennsylvania while he was visiting some firefighters. They handed him a MAGA hat and he put it on.
Yeah.
And so there's this video of him putting on a MAGA hat, which is not a vote of confidence in Kamala Harris. And so the Trump War Room put out a tweet about this, said, breaking, Kamala did so bad in last night's debate, Joe Biden put on a Trump hat. The guy is a dunce, and he's actually still in charge, by the way.
That's what I'm saying. When you realize this is the president and they have buried him. When he was at the national convention for the Democratic Party, they had him speak at like 11 o'clock at night. It's unprecedented. Let's put it that way. It's unprecedented.
Well, and he slurred his words then too. But he's this is the guy who's actually deciding what happens with the country right now, and so it's really concerning. It's disappointing that this guy is still there, but at the same time, he's a dunce. And everybody can see it. So that's the video. And a lot of people are calling out the fact that he doesn't really like Kamala Harris, but that's just sort of plain. None of these people have real feelings. They're all like soulless ghouls, just want power, and they don't really care.
And the people that control them, and the people that control them just want an empty suit. And the only problem with Biden was he just became so obviously clueless that they had to do something. Otherwise, they would have kept him going. She is no different, except maybe the problem with her is when Biden, before he started losing his mind, if you will, he was more, eloquent, better platform skills than her. Her platform skills are, I'm not even talking about her positions. Her platform skills are just atrocious. I mean, how can you take someone? Her persona is just atrocious. How can you take her seriously? And
Well,
clearly,
it's just fiction is what it is.
Yeah.
At this point, it's fiction. And so there's nothing real to it. But she's hoping that no one will notice. Now, I will say that, talking about the debate, that here was my analysis that I sent to somebody. I'll just read it. It's brief, but it's pretty to the point. And it's Kamala succeeded at dispelling her ditzy word salad image. That she did, right? She deflected or never was asked in the first place any challenging questions that should have been answered about her radical views from the past, or how she managed to change them to something that apparently doesn't sound as radical anymore. But she was never asked any of the challenging questions that she should have answered about those views, which she just jettisoned those views in order to get elected. Bernie Sanders is unable to apparently advance the lie. So he actually said, well, she's just not running on radical stuff right now because she wants to get elected.
Yeah, he just said it.
Lying.
Yeah. He said what we all thought.
Well, and the moderators constantly berated and corrected Trump, but never corrected or made Kamala answer any substantive questions. She was asked yes and no questions about her positions from the past, and they kept following up with Trump when he gave the answer he wanted. When she gave the answer she wanted, they said nothing. She was just able to continue spouting her vague platitudes that she does all the time when asked for specific answers.
So when is it the moderator's job to fact check? They shouldn't be fact checking at all, first of all. But if they should moderate. They're not supposed to be doing that. But that's what they did, and they only did it against him. But the thing is, I think the only people that really matter in this, from an audience perspective, are the independents, because they're the only ones whose votes are really up for grabs.
Right. We'll get to the polling here in a second. I just wanted to kind of finish sharing this perspective that I had. That put the burden on Trump to do all the heavy lifting and hold her accountable.
Yeah.
And I think he probably didn't succeed at doing that to the extent that he could have. Because there were times that he kind of did get distracted by some of the things that, like, she talked about crowd size, and she knew that was like catnip, like irresistible. So he devoted his minute to talking about that, when in fact he should have just gone after her on what was going on with the economy or the border, especially the economy, because the number one message that needed to come through was that 4 years ago you had peace and you had prosperity, unprecedented prosperity. Now you got wars and you got inflation and a weakened economy. Which one do you want? She promises she can't tell you anything that they've done wrong. She says it's all great, and she's going to do something on day one, which was actually 3.5 years ago. And of course, instead, he did get kind of provoked by some of these fact-free attacks, or she just said stuff like, you're going to raise taxes, which is nonsense, complete nonsense. I'm not going to raise taxes. But she just said stuff like that in order to kind of distract and get drawn into topics that really made it difficult to get some significant blows against her in the melee, because he had to do it all himself. So it was 3 against 1. And I said what I thought the theme should be, and some of that did get through. Kamala says she wants to do better without admitting that people are unhappy with what she and Biden have given them so far. Trump did score some points by challenging her to go wake up Biden and get him to order the border closed and other things that she says she wants to do and should just do now, instead of talking about it as a campaign talking point. But I think it might have been a missed opportunity. It could have been, if done right, not a knockout blow, but she was prepared to try and turn the debate into what it was with the help of the ABC so-called moderators. And all she had to do, and she did do, is project strength without saying something stupid, which is a low bar. It's just survival is what it is. Ultimately, the impact of debates, though, historically is minimal. We've seen that in presidential elections where George W. Bush supposedly lost all 3 debates to John Kerry in 2004, but won the election. Mitt Romney mopped the floor with Obama in the first debate, didn't really do much in the second 2 debates, lost the election. And debates are often, their effect is limited. There's these moments that happen, and then there's this influence or this feeling that people get. And so I still think that it's Trump's race to lose. And a tie in the swing state polls means advantage Trump because he always outperforms the polls, which always said in the past that he was down. And then you end up with this, photo finish dead heat election. So barring another surprise, I think the economy remains the major X factor in the election at this point, and the economy is slowing right now.
Well, and this is the thing: the independents, which are really the only ones you really need to worry about, they're looking at this and, well, we haven't talked about my pocketbook very much, and Trump did touch on a few of those things.
Yeah,
my pocketbook, hey, you can lie all you want about data, statistics, and what you're going to do, but what has it been? Just like you mentioned earlier, inflation's still atrocious. Eggs are up by 50%, gas is up like 30 or 40%, groceries 25%, interest rates are like terrible, wars everywhere on the planet.
yeah.
And we just talked about the immigration thing, absolutely a crime. I think he may have touched on her behavior with the Minnesota riots. And we haven't even talked about the social things that they promote in terms of the chopping of children and all those kinds of things. All those things are real, and she's not talking about them. And
She didn't have to. And that was the problem with that debate, is that she didn't really have to. And unfortunately, the only person who could have made her talk about it would have been Trump. And that was hard to do. But in some ways, maybe he should have done more of it. The polling, what you were saying, is kind of showing that independents. Well, here's what this report says: despite pundits widely proclaiming Vice President Kamala Harris is the victor in Tuesday night's presidential debate, post-contest polling and viewer panels appear to show Trump either gaining ground or holding his own. And he was in the lead slightly going into this in the polls. And so we'll see what happens in the coming days. But the CNN flash poll held after the debate showed Harris improve on her pre-debate favorability ratings slightly by like just a few percentage points, but Trump, by contrast, largely held steady. Like, it didn't change anyone's minds, and he gained ground on the economy with 55% saying they preferred him to handle the economy versus Harris. And then, so there might have been a slight improvement in Harris, but still down on the biggest issues. And then New York Times ran a headline saying pundits said Harris won the debate. Undecided voters weren't so sure. That's the New York Times admitting that, which says a lot.
Yeah. We don't, how can I say this? There aren't enough pundits to turn the election. And these people doing the commenting, they're looking at things through their lenses, through their Ivy League college educated eyes. And so they're judging who wins or loses based on that. The only thing who judges who wins or loses are the voters themselves and what they think. And when you look at that, Trump clearly did, we would like to have done better, get that, but I think he won.
Well, I think it's what effect is it going to have on the election. And Dick Morris put out a little video I'll share here with folks. They can go watch it, where he says Trump lost the debate, might win the election. And he kind of explains something similar here, that the debate really doesn't fundamentally change people's minds, even though you could view it as a missed opportunity to maybe close this election out and get a sustainable lead for Trump. There are Republicans that are pushing Trump to debate Harris in October. There's no certainty that Harris would do it. But if she's down, she might consider it, especially since it seemed like this one worked out. The thing is, she's going to say what she wants the rules to be and who's going to be the host and the moderator. And right now, that's going to pretty much look like the ABC debate.
For
And
the
so
life of me, I don't understand why Republicans keep agreeing to do debates with these major networks. I don't get it.
I see arguments on both sides for another debate, but at the same time, after the last debate with Biden in 2020, Biden was supposedly up by like 7 points in the polls, and we saw how close the finish was in the end, right? It seems like another debate might be unnecessary because it wasn't really necessary to close that gap last time. And if you're up or more or less holding firm, then maybe there's something else that needs to be done to get that message out there. And I think there is a risk for Kamala Harris that she can pull off one debate, but she can't pull off two without doing something stupid. I don't know. But then again, maybe Kamala Harris has an ace in the hole, which is to say that there's some earrings that were very interesting that she was.
I saw
wearing.
that.
And the company that makes the audio earrings that looked very similar to the ones she was wearing said that the resemblance is striking with the ones that they provide. It's a German company that sells earrings that resemble the ones that Harris actually wore and are shown in these photos. I know this could just be another, rumor or conspiracy theory, whatever, but this is the company itself saying, yeah, kind of looks like our stuff, really.
Well, given everything else they've done, why would you doubt anything, really?
Well, here's something ironic, though. Apparently, the company that makes these earrings is out of stock right now. Said currently we're unfortunately out of stock and also busy preparing a lawsuit against a big Chinese tech company breaching our patents. We're talking to investors in order to ramp up operations. Confident we'll ship again soon. So, I mean, I think these guys, they might be in Germany and have no vote, but I'll bet that they would like to see somebody get tougher on China.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure they would. What a crazy world we live in. What a crazy world. But
there's some. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but all of this still, what's in front of your face? I mean, you look at your neighborhood. I mean, you think about, we were just talking earlier about Springfield, Illinois. It's unbelievable. And
it's
that's
Ohio.
Not really,
Springfield,
Ohio. I'm sorry. I keep thinking the land of Lincoln, right? Lincoln's birthplace. But no, Springfield, Ohio. I mean, to do that to a community is unbelievable. I don't think you can speak enough about that sort of thing. Those are real people. Did you see the interview with the elderly lady?
Yep.
It's
like I've watched all of it. I watched a good portion of the city council meeting, and so there was the guy who in the Cincinnati Reds outfit who testified, and he was livid. And if some of the folks haven't actually seen that, I'll post a link to the article about it. There's also another article that shows a cat. It talks about a cat hanging from a branch being carved up for food, and then another guy carrying what looks like a bird, a Haitian guy, a guy with a goose actually in Columbus, Ohio, walking down the sidewalk, and it was posted on what do you call it, on Twitter by a Twitter handle called End Wokeness. And that was some of the origin of this. And I know it's been getting out there, but then I've also seen a video of somebody being arrested after they were caught mutilating what looked like some kind of small animal. But on top of that, and this is the Babylon Bee actually had something, some irony that was humorous, but at the same time, never funny if it's actually lacking truth. It has some truth, which is that, the authorities declare that they have no evidence that animals are being killed by Haitians in Springfield, Ohio. Just people. And there's truth to this, because testifying in front of the city commission, I've got 2 videos here by people whose father, one person whose father was killed, another mother-in-law was killed by an illegal Haitian immigrant. And I don't
Yeah.
know if they necessarily qualify as illegal because they're temporary protected status, which is something that Kamala Harris brags about. But putting 20,000 people into a town of that size, I can tell you, there's nowhere you just put 20,000 people.
That's got to be strategic. Why in the world would you do that? And where would you find the space? They had to know that there were empty houses there. Maybe they run the manufacturing out of town, and all these houses are empty. I mean, then you put all of these people in one spot, and that is really nefarious. There's no way that's accidental. And you go across the country. You look at what they've done to New York City with
Yeah.
putting people up in hotels, Chicago. These people are living it.
They
And the
said
national
they said
press is bearing that.
65% of the arrests in New York, in Manhattan right now by the police, migrants.
Yeah, yeah. And what Trump said, that statement around the crime is down in a lot of these countries and is up here, is up from their country of origins, because they're literally getting rid of, they're emptying their prisons here. And I remember that back, I want to say the Reagan administration, that happened with Cuba, did the same thing. So
We've seen this game plan before.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. And like most Americans, and this is true of most people all over the world, until it hits you in the face, until it's on your front porch, it's just not real for people. But we're getting to that point, and there's more than one way to do this. I mean, so you have if it's not the illegals themselves, it's the massive drugs that are coming across the border. So we're not seeing the whole Haitian thing in Portland, for example, but we are seeing a massive increase in
Yeah.
fentanyl. People are like, it's the same effect. It's destroyed the civilizational culture in people. So they behave no different than Haitians. Now they're not eating ducks and geese and cats, not yet. But you see
Yeah.
how they live. They're living in the streets. They're urinating in people's front yards, defecating in people's front, fornicating. The whole completely destruction of civilization, because their
Yeah.
minds have been destroyed.
If you told me that somebody downtown over some metal barrel fire was roasting up someone else's dog or cat, I'd be like, yeah, it's Portland. What do you expect? But
Right.
I can tell you that's not what is common in Springfield, Ohio. It's about as middle America as you get. And just to add a little bit more to that story here, here's a video posted by a Springfield resident who doesn't sound like he doesn't want to sound discriminatory or angry, but he's like, but I have to tell you, the stuff that is being reported is true. And then he gives personal examples for which he can account. I know what parks he's talking about, that there's ducks and geese in them. And he said he's personally aware of the stories that have happened from people that he knows that witnessed it. That the car wrecks from people that are wrecking cars there who don't have any familiarity with driving and much less the rules, and don't speak any English, by the way, is true. That he said the accidents are crazy. And then he went about describing how these guys get a driver's license. They just show up at the DMV in Ohio, and they don't have to present any evidence that they even know how to drive a car. They automatically get a 45-day driver's permit. They have to go in and renew it after 45 days. And at no time do they have to show any evidence that they are capable of driving. It also doesn't sound like they have to show any evidence, which has been true since the 80s when I lived there, that they have liability insurance. So they're going around and they're wrecking to people. And then I talked to a very good friend of mine. I communicated with a very good friend of mine who said that his barber actually was one of the people that was injured in one of these car wrecks by these folks just driving around town, don't know how to drive a car, have done nothing to show any evidence that they qualify for a driver's license. And they're just going around town and wrecking into people. This is real, and then it's real enough that the Republican governor of Ohio, is sending $2.5 million in law enforcement to Springfield to handle the surge in Springfield, Ohio, and that the Attorney General is looking into how to stop the Biden-Harris administration from sending more people there. Like, they're not done doing this to Ohio. I can tell you why this is being done.
Yeah,
So,
I'd love to hear your theory on that because I have mine too. But yeah,
well, I can give it to you. So, along Interstate 70 that runs through the middle of Ohio, that is essentially, when Ohio was considered more of a swing state, that was the part that switched back and forth between elections.
mm-hmm.
In an election like 2000, when it was obviously razor thin and close, and Ohio was up in the air on that one, of course. Clark County, where Springfield is, voted for Al Gore. In 2004, when George W. Bush won Ohio and therefore the presidency, that was the state. When he won it, he had won the presidency. Clark County, Ohio, voted for George W. Bush. So it's a swing county historically. Now, you got the northern and eastern part of the state, Cleveland, heavily Democrats. The southern and western part of the state, heavily Republican. And that strip across the middle. That's why you send 20,000 people to a town like Springfield. You're trying to figure out how to eventually change the city, either to get people that won't put up with it anymore to leave, mostly conservatives, or to eventually get these people on the voter rolls, where they live there as citizens and distort the numbers. They certainly are trying to figure out how they can get these folks to skew the census a little bit more too. And they've been doing that all over the country. And they're not, and there's no secret to that. Democrats have actually voted against stopping that, stopping people from being counted who are here illegally in our voter rolls. Non-citizens are not really, when they aren't here legally, the Congress could decide not to count them for the purposes of apportionment. And apportionment is how many congressional representatives your state gets. And how many congressional representatives your state gets directly affects how many electoral votes your state has. So they are interested in, this is a game they've been playing, and I think they maybe finally got caught doing it.
Well, the whole thing is, look what they've done.
Bush made 11 visits to Springfield, Ohio, Clark County, and I know that because my parents are living there, and they got to attend the rallies that took place when he was there 11 times. So there's your answer.
So I think the objective too here is look at what they've done to California. California used to be a state that would go back and forth. It's been a one-party state for the last 4 years. And once you get a one-party state, look at the destruction that ensues. Now, if you can get 50 states to be one-party states, you see where this is headed. And that's ultimately what they want, because then you can implement communism. And one other thought on this, which is a little bit of a different take from what you just described in Springfield, I think about Portland, where they allowed downtown to just be ravaged. I mean, absolutely savaged over the last 4 years. Now, all of a sudden, it's all cleaned up, but now all the businesses are gone and the leases are expiring. Those business people are losing money. And all of a sudden, we got like Four Seasons popping up. Now, how in the world is that happening? I think we have an investor class that's a part of this.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. We also have a government that wants to give free stuff to non-citizens. And this was called out in the Oregon Catalyst today, the 3 big handouts to non-citizens. And I just posted that. There's the $30,000 home grants by the Hacienda Home Ownership Program, which they eventually claimed was just a mistake, that somebody put it on literature and it wasn't true, which is nonsense. And it was $30,000 home down payments from a program that was getting its money from HUD, which is federal money, the housing government. So they were taxing Americans to give money to non-citizens at a time when Americans can't afford to buy homes. And then the second one is $1,000 a month youth homeless stipend. And this apparently includes giving these stipends to non-citizens.
Think to
$1,000
yourself for a minute what this will inevitably result in. This happens enough, and you go to, like, say, some of the inner city places like Chicago, for example. That happens enough, and you're creating the seeds for riots, for basically anti-immigrant riots or race riots or whatever you want to call it, where people are going to reach a boiling point, and you're going to have those kinds of things happening.
They're going to provoke people. That's
Sure.
right. And that's what's happening in Springfield, by the way. There's a guy who testified in front of the city council. They had him
Mhm.
removed because they said he sounded threatening. Even though I listened and I'm like, he was just
Mhm.
describing what he was concerned was going to happen. He wasn't
Mhm.
threatening anybody, but they had him
Right.
removed.
Mhm.
Some woke idiot went and said, "Well, that sounds threatening to me.
Because
You'll
he's
have to
speaking
leave."
because he's speaking the truth, that you
Yeah.
do that enough, and it is going to happen.
Well,
Which
it's
I
straight out
think
of
is
Orwell, isn't it? The
yes,
most
that's part
dangerous
of
thing to do uh, is to tell the truth in a society where the truth is the biggest danger of all to who's running things. And
yeah.
by the way, the state of Oregon built a $30 million welcome center at the airport for migrants and non-citizens, um, and and so they're that was the other thing. That was another giveaway.
Mhm.
And this is going on right under our noses now. That there was a backlash against this non-citizen down payment program, a big backlash, and Senator Daniel Bonham, the Republican leader in the Senate, uh, wrote an article about this and called it out. So even Oregon, it's like they're just going too far.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And Oregon is not as deep blue as it was. I mean, it's progress. Um,
And maybe this comes full circle back to the presidential race because Kamala Harris in 2019, when she was running for president, filled out a candidate questionnaire for the ACLU in which she committed to the following: taxpayer funding of gender reassignment surgeries and treatments for illegal aliens, a pathway to citizenship for those who broke the law by crossing the US border without permission, the decriminalization of all illegal drugs under federal law, including cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, if a defendant claimed they were for personal use. That sounds familiar, Measure 110.
yeah.
And the kneecapping of the nation's main deportation agency, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, or ICE as it is colloquially known in Washington circles, by banning its use of deportation. She committed these things in writing in 2019. Not one question about that last night, and this report existed before last night's debate. And so maybe stuff's starting to catch up with her. Also, she made a speech in 2023, last year, on transgender rights that is maybe going to boomerang on her because she calls laws that try to prevent, say, biological men from competing in women's sports. She calls them anti-equality laws, but actually they're just common sense to most Americans.
Right.
And
Sure.
pollster Scott Rasmussen is pointing this out, saying this is actually probably going to come back to bite her.
And then this is one of these things where, again, you look at the things that have happened where they've, for example, what they did to Elon Musk, and he acquired Twitter, and they turned him into basically a conservative with their behavior. And now there's a platform that wasn't there before. And so that is that. If Trump wins, that will be a huge part of it. There's actually a place where you can get regular news like you used to.
Yeah, no, that's right. And by the way, Kamala Harris called the surgeries life-saving, gender-affirming care. We've heard that in Oregon, and that assertion that it's life-saving is also starting to bleed into big tech. Apparently, YouTube is concerned about videos that mentioning suicide, but they're only concerned about it when it involves gender ideology. And they say they may ban misgendering entirely. Like if you refuse to actually state the gender that is asserted by somebody, they may ban on YouTube even being able to say that or assert or say anything to that effect. Even though they allow videos, like Robin Williams talked about killing himself, which he did. Gory animations of Chinese genital self-mutilation, weird stuff. They don't plan to ban any of that. That's all okay. but they are talking about banning what they are trying to describe it as hate speech and blah blah blah. And they're trying to go after mini documentaries put out by the Daily Signal, even the trailer to promote it that talks about this this issue. And so, we still have companies that think that are really just acting as arms at times of these political entities that are going to try and silence you and me.
Sure.
And we know the Biden administration, of course, had people that were going and threatening these platforms when they didn't actually go far enough in silencing the opponents and critics of the Biden administration. I should say the Biden-Harris administration.
Yeah. No, it's pretty horrendous. I know and I can't keep track of all the multiple lawsuits that are out there, but I know there are some suits out there that are designed to break apart or limit their ability to do that. It almost feels like Teddy Roosevelt and his trust busting legislation, back at the turn of the last century. It seems like something like that needs to happen. I mean, they're too big. They have too much control. They're answerable to no one. Well, they answer to the government. And when things get too big, it becomes a target for misuse and abuse.
It does. And, and then when they can't figure out how to just silence you, maybe they'll just throw you in jail. And it's very interesting that the day after the debate, in which this was a topic brought up by the moderators, which was about January 6th and President Trump. And of course, he rightly said that Nancy Pelosi was responsible for security at the Capitol and refused security he offered. All documented, proven facts, and her on video stating this, that she actually failed to secure the Capitol. And so she admitted it. It just came out only once it was subpoenaed, not subpoenaed, but Freedom of Information Act, required by an entity that requested it. Not for the documentary it was supposed to be used in and never used by Pelosi's daughter. But here's what happened today, which would have been a very interesting thing to know yesterday. Justice Department drops nearly half of pending obstruction charges in J6 cases. So they dropped half of the charges. Now, just imagine if President Trump could have talked about that yesterday. If you want to know if the Department of Justice has reformed itself and started to purge itself of political agendas, there you go. They didn't want to have this information be known at a debate, maybe the only debate between the presidential candidates in which the topic of January 6th would be brought up.
Yeah, it's just complete nonsense. For the life of me, I don't know how people buy into that, but apparently they do.
Well, you can just tell people about it. Tell people about the captive audience. Remind them of the days when cats are safe in Springfield, and when many other things made much more sense in the past. But now it's making sense now, all for the nefarious reasons that we have people running this country who just need to go. They need to be sent packing so we can actually get back to having a country and a prosperous economy and a peaceful world. And there's so much more we could talk about from last night's debate, but I think we've hit just about all the treetops this time, haven't we, Don?
I think we have. Wow. I mean, you probably need, you don't have enough hours to cover it all, but that'll have to suffice for tonight.
It will. Hey, it's been great being on here with you again.
Yeah, a lot of fun. It's good to see you again and looking forward to the next time.
Yes, sir. And we want to thank all of our super fans and anybody new as well for watching tonight. Please share the show with everyone you can. We keep plowing away, talking about what's in the news and what you need to know. And, a lot of other people need to know it. So get out there and share it widely, and keep fighting the good fight and support candidates who can help us turn the tide. Very important. Financially, with your time and effort, very important. And anyway, we'll be back on Friday with the next episode of the Captive Audience. No idea what the program is going to be, but we will have one. And then we'll see Don next Wednesday on the next episode.
I'll be there. Be square.